There we go, Chair.
Lyfli. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi gyd. A chroeso, diolch. Cyfieithu'n gweithio yn iawn. Rwy'n gallu rhoi bus bawd lan os ydych cyfieithu'n gweithio. Ie, gret. Diolch yn fawr. Oce, wel, jyst i gyflwyno'n hunan, fi yw Eifion Evans, fi yw Prifwythedwr o Gyngor Sir Ceredigion a'r cyfrifoldeb am eleni i arwen ar y gwaith ynghlwm gyda CJC. Yn y letrwydd gyntaf yn y fan bydd i benodi cadeirydd ac is-gadeirydd ar gyfer y pwyllgor yma. Yn amlwg mae cynghorwyr o Geredigion a Phowys fydd yn cael ei ystyried, neu o Bani Brycheiniog, ond beth i ni'n licen i roi rhyw fath o gefndir i chi am y pwyllgor craffu yma. Mae'r deddfwriaeth wedi cael ei gyflwyno ers blwyddyn a fwy bellach nawr yn gofyn i rhanbarthau ar draws Cymru gyfan i sefydlu cydbwyllgor CJC, Corporate Joint Committees, ac pwrpas a diben yr endid yna yw i gynorthwyo yn benodol ar gyfer elfennau yn ymwneud gyda chynllunio yr SDP, neu yn ymwneud gyda trafnidiaeth, neu yn ymwneud gyda datblygiad economaidd rhanbarthol. Mae maint y CJCs yn ymrywio o rhanbarth i rhanbarth. Yma yn y canolbarth, dim ond ni a Phowys sydd yn yr un bartneriaeth. Mae yna bartneriaethau eraill ar draws y gogledd a 6 a mwy o awdurdodau. Mae'r De Dwyrain a 11 o awdurdodau. Felly mae'r gweinidog wedi gosod hyblygrwydd mewn yn y system i ganiatáu ar neges clir gaethon ni gyda Julie James oedd bod y CJC yma fod gwasanaethu y rhanbarthau yn ôl i dymuniad nhw ac nid rhywbeth sydd wedi cael ei fodelu ar un model o weithredu yn unig. Nawr, wrth gwrs, mae yna ofynion gyda bwrdd o'r math yma. Mae rhaid bod yna bwyllgor i graffu ar y gwaith sydd yn digwydd. Mae yna atebolrwydd i'r Comisiwn Iaith. Mae yna atebolrwydd i bob comisiynydd, yn bod yn onest, trwyddo fe. A mae yna gofynion stydidol yn gorwedd gyda ni. Felly, dyw e ddim yn opsiwn i ni beidio a chynnal pwyllgor craffu. Mae rhaid cynnal y gwaith. Ond ar hyn o bryd, mae'r bartneriaeth yma yn ei blentyndod. Mae e'n ychydig iawn o waith sydd wedi digwydd yn y cefndir, a mae yna bapur gen i yn esbonio ble i ni ar hyn o bryd yn y cefndir. Mae yna opsiynau gyda ni siwt i ni'n gweithredu, a fi'n credu un o'r pethau pwysica oll wnaethon ni nodi oedd bod yna ddim pwrpas i ni i daflu pob peth mewn i ryw endid ychwanegol a chreu haen biwrocrataidd ychwanegol yn y system pan bod yna bartneriaeth rhwng y ddwy awdurdod yn gweithio mor dda a bod yna gydweithio agos wedi bod ac yn llwyddiannus lan hyd yma. Felly, beth i ni'n wedi wneud wrth bod ni'n creu yr weledigaeth ar gyfer y bartneriaeth yma, beth welwch chi yw bod e'n tynnu blaenoriaethau Powys a Cheredigion ynghyd. Ac felly does dim byd yn wahanol ac yn newydd i'r endid yma nag sydd wedi cael cymeradwyaeth gwleidyddol o fewn Powys ac o fewn Ceredigion hyd yn hyn. Ond na i esbonio fwy o hwnna pan gyreiddwn i'r papur. Ond y peth cyntaf sydd angen i fi wneud, fi'n gobeithio bod hwnna wedi tynnu ychydig o amser i chi ystyried cynnig enw ar gyfer cadeirio'r cyfarfod yma, a enw arall wedyn ar gyfer yr is-gadeirydd. Felly, os dechreuai gyda cadeirydd, os yna enwebiadau gyda chi ar gyfer pwy all gadeirio'r pwyllgor yma, os gwelwch yn dda? Neb isio'r job. Does anybody fancy it?
It has to be a member, I'm afraid. So, members, can somebody please volunteer? And if you volunteer, can we have a proposal on the second to go with that?
because I've got a blank screen, because I can't see, I'm struggling. Otherwise, I would volunteer, but because I've got a blank screen, it's very difficult for me. I'm so sorry.
Hylwyn, if you were to volunteer, we can talk you and help you as much as we can around that. Are you prepared to put your name forward?
Let's see who comes forward.
Okay.
Os na unrhyw un arall, neu os nag os e, would somebody second the Heilwen as a chair?
I'll second her. Yeah.
Oh, well done, Maldwyn. Yeah. Excellent. Heilwen, I got some bad news for you.
Thank you, Councillor Hylwyn. You do have the papers, which is
Yes, I do.
I see that you got them on your desk, so that's a good start. So thank you ever so much for volunteering.
Oh, okay, no problem. Okay then, right. Okay, we shall make a start then. And thank you, Evian, for that overview then of the function of this subcommittee. Do we have? Oh no, we need a vice chair now.
We need a vice chair. Again, nominations, please, or volunteers, please.
What about Carl? We propose Carl?
Can't see Councillor Carl. Are you still there, Councillor Carl?
You're on mute, Carl.
You're on mute, Councillor Carl.
Yeah, still you're ever hiding. If it needs help, yeah, I'll put my name forward until you find somebody better.
Okay. You need a second as well then.
A seconder, please, for Councillor Carl.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Jeremy.
Okay, so we can now proceed then. Thank you all very much indeed. So have we any apologies for today, please?
I think we better record Councillor Gwyn Wigley-Evans' apology because he's clearly having difficulty joining. But
okay.
And Carwyn Jones-Evans has got his hand up as well, Heilwen.
Just on that point, Avion, I've just come off the phone with Councillor Wigley-Evans. We've tried everything, and unfortunately he's just unable to join. So yeah, he'll keep on trying, and if he's able to join, but he kindly notes his apologies if he's unable to join.
All right, thank you, Cadwyn. Right, we now move on to item 4 on the agenda, terms of reference, pages 3 to 8. Who is going to take us through those, please?
Carwyn, I think you're going to take this first. No?
No, not my understanding. No, sorry, Clive. No.
Okay. Well, I'll do it. In terms of the terms of reference, which are on pages 3 to 8. Members, this is an extract from the constitution of the CJC Overview and Scrutiny Subcommittee. And you'll see that this is essentially been already approved as part of the CJC Constitution. Members will see from the paragraph E7 of it that the quorum is no less than 4 members, 2 from each constituent council. Frequency is dealt with in E8 of the document, which is on page 5. This says that the meeting will meet quarterly, having regard to the CJC meetings, and additional meetings may be convened with at least 7 clear days' notice by the chair. Members, you will know that this is the first meeting of the CJC Scrutiny Committee, and in essence, that's simply because there's, as Ivan indicated to start with, that there's been very little or not a great deal of work, and I wouldn't say very little because there's been a lot of work being done in the background, but nothing substantive, and hence there's been nothing to bring before the committee at this moment in time. But the purpose of this meeting is is to introduce members to the CJC, to inform members of what the CJC is intending to do, and Ivan will give an overview of that as part of his briefing. And unless members have any queries about the Constitution, which is on, as I said, starts on pages 3 to 10, I think it's self-explanatory, but I'm open to questions from anybody.
If I may, Chair, if I could come in for a moment, because one thing we may want to consider is, when we go through the detail of this, you'll see in the first instance, you'll probably come to the conclusion that quarterly is too often, because the amount of work that we will be focusing on through the CJC will be fairly minimal in its extent of what subjects we'll be covering. However, over the period of time, you may see that grow, and the need may grow back to quarterly. So I'm in your hands as members of the board, what you think is appropriate. Do you want to reduce that to 3 meetings a year, even 2 meetings a year for now, and then use your discretion to review the terms and conditions of the group as we go along?
So what you're saying, was that Avion, was it?
Yeah,
It was, yes.
Yeah, sorry, Avion. Yes, I take on board what you're saying. So what you're saying to us is that this scrutiny subcommittee, whilst not having a great deal to consider at the moment, but the pace and the momentum will pick up as we go forward.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. So is everybody else happy with, going half yearly or going 3 times a year for the initially? Let's see what our program is, and then, because obviously I have the option to call in. I'm just looking here. A summary of that shall be circulated by the monitoring office. Right, okay. So there is a calling process if necessary.
Absolutely, that's fine. There's a requirement for all scrutiny committees to be able to call in decisions once they're made. But at this moment in time, there has been a decision for you to even consider, not yet alone to call in.
Yes, quite. No, but yeah, totally agree. So yes, so what were you proposing, Avion? Half yearly or three meetings a year to start with?
I'd be happy half yearly or 3 times a year. I'm in your hands completely, Chair, what you think is appropriate. I didn't want to bring people into a scrutiny pattern too early in the process, because the danger would be that there's nothing to talk about in the first few meetings, and then that might in itself have a negative impact on the purpose of the scrutiny committee going forward. I don't want to waste anybody's time here, but as momentum grows, I think it would be important to review the terms and conditions to increase the regularity of these meetings as the need arises.
Okay, I take on board your comments there. So we will go initially, let's go forward for the next 12 months with half yearly, and then review it as and when the pace and the momentum of the work that we need to scrutinise through this committee goes forward and picks up pace. Okay.
Good.
Chair, for the sake of for the governance, can I please ask for a proposal and a seconder to that, and then we can take that forward.
I'm happy to propose that, Malwyn Lewis.
Thank you, Councillor Malwyn. I can see Councillor Carl nodded. Oh, thank you, Councillor Carl.
Okay, those are the 2 we need. That's excellent. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. And now we go on to the CJC update report from the Chief Executive Officer, pages 9 to 14 in the pack.
Okay, diolch Elwen. Well, if we start by looking at the background to this, so obviously Local Government Elections Act 2021 set the scene for the creation of CJCs, and there's an expectation on regions across Wales to have this arrangement in place. It is an arrangement that delegates decision-making down to the leaders of the constituent authorities and representative authorities that sit on that particular board. And as I said in my preamble, Julie James made it clear from the outset that the CJCs were here to facilitate pace in working at a strategic level. However, in creating those entities, everything around that particular body had to be compliant with good governance. Hence, we need a scrutiny committee to be able to challenge any future decisions or recommendations that the CJC may be considering for the future. So what was contained within the legislation, there are 3 pillars that are the main focus areas for the CJC. They are the strategic development planning, a critical piece of work, because the strategic development plan will be the regional plan that determines the amount of future development across the Mid Wales region. Now, this element of the work also includes Banau Brycheiniog. So Banau Brycheiniog National Park, they are a planning authority in their own right, and therefore there will be 3 decision makers in relation to the strategic development plan. The local authorities LDP must reflect the vision contained within the SDP. So the SDP is a very important strategic regional document, and there are clear parameters around what the region can and cannot do in relation to future planning arrangements. And of course, both Powys, Ceredigion and Banau Brycheiniog will have to then review the content of their LDP to reflect what's contained and mirror then the direction of which the strategic planning has been presented. So as you can imagine, going forward, scrutinising that is going to be absolutely essential, both at local level and in a regional context as well. So there will be a lot of work to do from a scrutiny perspective in relation to that particular element in the first instance. The second pillar is regional transport planning. And again, a really important document. It's a statutory document and a statutory requirement, but this one will only be statutory for Powys County Council and Ceredigion County Council. So a combined regional transport plan is absolutely essential to have in place in order to acquire and bid for future funding streams and to influence Welsh Government and even UK Government funding streams for the future for transport infrastructure across the regional belt of Wales. And again, as you can imagine, preparing a strategic document that captures the desire of what Powys County Council and aspirations of Powys County Council have got, and also Ceredigion County Council has got, they've got to be aligned in a regional transport plan. And as you can imagine, again, the scrutiny element of this will be in 2 parts. You'll always need the local scrutiny of any regional transport plan, but you'll also have to have a consensus at a regional level for that as well. So in order for the democratic processes to work effectively, local scrutiny arrangements and a regional scrutiny arrangement to be able to advise and make recommendations back to the board. And the board in this context now, the final decision-making body, will be the leader of Powys and the leader of Ceredigion. So having that democratic input early doors at a local level and a regional level will be absolutely critical here. I think this is a good time to explain the differences then. As you can imagine, the scale of what we're talking about here, because if we were talking about an amalgamation of 6 to 10 or 11 local authorities, you can see how the scale of the type of scrutiny committee that you'd be looking for would be far greater than when we work in a partnership of 2. And in a partnership of 2, it's, you know, what we have to do is make sure that the interest of both parties are recognised and captured equally and consistently, so that we can develop and nurture this desire to work collaboratively and to develop that an environment of trust and respect of one another. So the type of scrutiny we have to have here has to look after the interests of Powys and Ceredigion equally, whereas other regions may well be looking at priority areas which would potentially have a bigger focus on investment in a certain geographical area as opposed to another one. So in this context, the CJC Scrutiny Committee will have two strategic documents that they must look at, namely Strategic Development Plan and the Regional Transport Plan. The third pillar, equally as important, is the economic well-being agenda. Now, some authorities and some CJCs are lifting the growth deal arrangements they've got in their particular areas and dropping them directly into the CJC. Now, we've taken an approach where we're not going to do that, and I'll explain to you why we're not going to do it. There are financial implications to this. Clive, as monitoring officer, has spent an awful lot of time developing a very robust, comprehensive inter-authority agreement between Powys and Ceredigion, where we have shared responsibilities for duties and roles. So as Clive is the monitoring officer for the growth deal, he's also the monitoring officer for the CJC. And we've got Duncan Hall with us, who is the Section 151 officer in Ceredigion. He's also the Section 151 officer here. So we've got shared responsibilities around supporting the governance. I don't think we need to, if we lifted and dropped the growth deal monies into the CJC, you're giving the final decisions over just to two individuals. But more importantly, from a bureaucratic perspective, what we're doing is we're creating another layer of bureaucracy where we would have to take money from frontline services in Powys and Ceredigion to pay Audit Wales to scrutinise an extra layer of an arrangement around funding arrangements. If it's a host authority that's looking after the money, that gets absorbed in the auditing of accounts normally that Ceredigion would be reporting on. But if we wanted to put them into a CJC entity, the CJC has to then commission Audit Wales to audit the accounts separately again. So Powys would be auditing, Ceredigion would be auditing, and then there'll be a separate auditing arrangement for the CJC. We can't see how that would give us any benefit at all. It's much better to have all the money we possibly can have going down to realise the vision and the aspirations of both authorities equally, and to make sure that as least amount of money as possible is lost through bureaucratic processes. So what we've suggested is a model that will serve us best by following that particular route. So as far as the CJC membership is concerned, 2.5 in my report, there's a list there for you to see clearly who exactly has specific roles. The important thing to remember is the chair and the lead CEO role alternates on an annual basis. So I'll be in post now up until June, I believe, June, if I'm correct, Clive. And then Emma will swap with me. Mm-hmm. And then James and Brian will swap as the current leaders, or whoever the leaders are at the time. So we'll be alternating on an annual basis, yeah, to make sure that nobody gets any dominance or of any arrangements. It's the responsibility is shared in a mutually reciprocal way constantly throughout that period. And what you've agreed just now in relation to the Regional Scrutiny Committee makes perfect sense, because you've got a Powys chair in the first year, you'll have a Ceredigion vice chair, and we can alternate that way as well. So exactly, in a partnership of two, it works wonderfully well. So we have to then, according to legislation, we have to then have sub-development planning groups for various things. So we've appointed officers, an officers group to look at the development of the strategic development plan. That's really in its infancy, and we still, the ball isn't rolling on that one at all yet. And there are challenges that we're still grappling with about how do we align the timing of the creation of an SDP, because Powys and Ceredigion are on different time scales in relation to their LDP arrangements. So that needs to be resolved. Otherwise, we'll be duplicating effort and energy and adding significant cost to the process. So we have to resolve those issues first and foremost. And both Emma and I met last Friday to discuss options that how we could have a look at what's possible, because obviously as officers we've got to give elected members in both authorities the correct advice on how to progress this issue. But we have to find a sensible way and a pragmatic way forward here, because at the moment there's a very real danger that the demand on the public purse will grow out of all sense and purpose. We have to have a bit of common sense coming into this, so we'll get as much legal advice in the background as we can to help inform decision making going forward. So this is why I was suggesting there's, it's very early days from a scrutiny perspective to scrutinise anything in relation to the SDP yet, but it's absolutely crucial that members in Powys and Ceredigion understand the implications of what's coming down the track of them with a strategic development plan that will be a legal requirement from next year onwards. Then you've got the regional transport plan. Again, that's work in progress. That's a little bit more advanced than where we are with the SDP, but only very, very slightly. So again, there's very little to look at this point in time. That's all we're doing at the moment, is creating the structure of governance rather than bringing anything specific to be scrutinised at the moment. And then the Economic Wellbeing Subcommittee, that's probably the most advanced element, because we do have money beginning to flow down in relation to the growth deal. And we have got a clear vision around where we're going with that. Progress, the other things, then we have to have a standard subcommittee. Legal requirement, we have to have a governance and audit subcommittee, and we have to have a scrutiny committee. Now, these are legal requirements linked to an entity that is empowered to make decisions above the executives of both Powys and Ceredigion. So just to note that those subcommittees have been created, and Clive has played a major role in making sure, and Nicola, in making sure that we are properly constituted, so that if we're challenged from a legal perspective, going back to the Local Government Act 2021, both authorities are compliant with the requirements. Where we are with the ability to scrutinise anything yet, it is way too soon. So section 4 looks at progress in relation to those, and I won't go through too much detail of that. That's there for information, and a summary of how small fry the budget is at this point in time. As things develop, there will have to be agreements between both authorities. How are we going to fund the SDP? And this will actually include Bani Brechino's contribution, because there will be a requirement for them to put a proportionate share of the funding on the table, and we are talking big sums of money here. So I know that both 751 officers from Powys and Ceredigion have been in discussions around how do we start preparing and putting money to one side ready for the task in hand. And so there's a breakdown of how the money looks at the moment. Very small beer in the grand scheme of things at the moment, but that will grow as well as we go forward. So 4.4, the corporate plan. The corporate plan now has been drafted and out to consultation. And I think the key message here, this is the absolute key message. The requirement in legislation is we have to create well-being objectives for the CJC. Now, because we're only 2 authorities, it made perfect sense that Powys' corporate plan and Ceredigion's corporate plans were ultimately the backbone of the corporate plan for the CJC. So rather than creating well-being objectives that were different to what we've identified as well-being objectives in Ceredigion, or what you've identified in Powys, they are now aligned together. We've merged both together. So the corporate plan identifies both the priorities that both executives, both full councils have approved as their corporate strategies for this administration. We've merged them, and that's that luxury doesn't exist if you've got many more authorities in a partnership. But because we're only 2, the document isn't too wieldy, and more importantly, where your priorities lie in Powys and our priorities lie in Ceredigion, they're very much aligned anyway. So bringing them together in a single plan was the most sensible, coherent way to put this plan together. So the remainder of my report, then, if you look through it, you got your, we obviously there's a number of items we have to cover here, as you would expect. So integrated impact assessment, workforce impacts, legal impact, risk management impacts. All of these are components that must be recorded, what we're doing about them, and for you to be aware of the proper governance. Because if we don't cover those elements, we wouldn't then be meeting the statutory requirements of the legislation. And when CJCs will be audited in the future, the risk would be that we wouldn't be compliant. So we have to put all of those component parts in. That in itself is a very bureaucratic demand, but we need to try and keep it as simple as we possibly can, because as you can see, the scale of the partnership working that we've got doesn't in itself warrant a huge amount of investment of time and effort at this stage, and it needs to grow gradually. And every step we take, every incremental step we take, I think our barometer has to be: does it add value to both authorities? That's the challenge we have to ask ourselves constantly. What is this? Where's the added value in working in this way and in this partnership? And as long as we ask that question regularly of ourselves, we won't be wasting anybody's time, but we will be legally compliant with the statutory requirements of the legislation. I have given for information. I would have added it in, but the report was published before this. But I have challenged Audit Wales, because Audit Wales have had a general review of the current setup arrangements of CJCs across Wales, and they have made recommendations which go outside of the remit of legislation. So I have challenged Audit Wales back to tell them that the 3 pillars I've mentioned are the statutory requirements set in legislation. It doesn't suggest that any authority has to go beyond that point. But yet the recommendation is, we should be looking at other things. And I think at this point in time, it's important that we tread this path carefully, methodically and slowly together. And where we see collectively benefits and opportunities, it's at that stage that we start thinking, or could we take advantage of the CJC arrangement to add value and to add efficiency to the ways that both authorities work. But I'd want to tread very carefully with that, so we don't jump through hoops for the sake of jumping through them and just add bureaucracy to both authorities where we don't have the time or the capacity to be able to do more than what we're doing at the moment. Yeah. So that's my report, Chair. I'm happy to take questions.
And I think what you just said, it's imperative that we embed into these 3 specific areas first and foremost, before, as you say, jumping into other areas. That's vitally important. And also the other thing I picked up, in the regional transport plan, case for change, this should set out the aim of the regional transport plan and core SMART objectives. What are the SMART objectives, Avion?
SMART objectives. Well, I'm sure we're all familiar with the term SMART objectives. It's just a way of identifying targets that are deliverable. So they want us to focus on outcomes at the end of the day. That's work in progress at the moment. And Anne Elias is leading on this particular piece of work. And when we get to the point where the strategic plan, the transport plan has been produced, that needs to be scrutinised in this forum, as well as locally within Powys and Ceredigion as well. And the biggest challenge would be then, well, what added value is this giving us, and is it delivering the outcomes that we would want moving forward?
Yeah, okay, thanks, Avion.
Councillor Jeremy wants to come in now.
Right, thank you. Go on, Jeremy.
Thank you, Avion. Item 5, Part 4, the corporate plan, in my opinion, lacks any of their objectives. So it's going to be very difficult. It's a weak document, in my opinion, personally. And to have anything like that, you need some objectives in there. And it's going to be impossible to scrutinise something which is as weak as this, is to see if it's achieving. So will we have objectives as first part of what is going forward, so we know what we're scrutinising, whether in fact not it is reaching the targets that's been set out. I hope I'm making sense to you.
Yeah, you are. I thought the well-being objective, because the statutory requirement in the legislation is that we include well-being objectives. So those well-being objectives are what's in the front of the document.
Actually say what them objectives are. It's just a lot of words with going nowhere. You know, I could fill a paper up with words. It needs to have clear objectives. You know, are we going on holiday? Are we going to turn right or left? Are we going straight on?
Yeah.
And I'm just saying that document to me doesn't tell me anything. It's just a lot of words. I'm sorry to be. I don't want to be.
No, but it's intended to be like that, Jeremy, because that's got to be the overarching sort of description of the high level stuff. What you're looking for the level of detail you're looking at has to be contained within this actual plans then themselves, which haven't been written yet. So when you talk about the regional transport plan, what you're looking at there is, you know, exactly what we're going to deliver. You don't put that in the high level document, because you'll fudge the whole thing if you do that.
You can't have a plan to go where you don't know where you're going. You need to know where you're going to have a plan, how you're going to get there. And this document does not say where we're going. It just says a lot of stuff, which is nice to be part of it. And it's a weak document. And if you're going to scrutinise, you can't scrutinise and judge failure or success, because there is nothing there that says what it is trying to do. That's all I want to do, is make that point. We need to know what we're trying to get to, what's the objectives of it. And I think that if we can get them objectives, then and we scrutinize something so we know what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And the one other one is the SDP and the LDP. What concerns me is the LDP, if it's got to reflect the SDP, are we trying to take over the planning restraints for each council and going to run it all under one roof? Because if we're doing, like you said, the minister has asked, we're supposed to be reflecting the views of the people, then surely each LDP should then go into the SDP, not the SDP controlled in the LDP.
Again, it's the sequence of documents. So what you've got there is the SDP is the higher level strategic document, the LDP. So what you're describing, Jeremy, is my concern as well. I don't disagree with you, because there's a real danger here that moving local planning, you know, Powys is a designated planning authority in its own right, as is Bannau Brycheiniog, as is Ceredigion. Producing a regional document is actually, in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, I've got to tread very carefully here, but you're actually taking a little element of local democracy out of the mix in putting regional planning structures like this in place. So for our perspective, that's why I'm suggesting we need to tread very, very carefully in what we're doing here. And I think there's a need to make sure that all our elected members across both authorities really do understand the consequences and implications of this going forward. Because the SDP, for example, will have a prescriptive planning quota for Mid Wales. And what they'll say there is, you know, we can only develop X amount of new dwellings over the 10-year period. And then that has to be then linked to a clear rationale why certain areas are allowed to build more than others. And I don't know, I would imagine there's already an issue in Powys, as there is in Ceredigion, where people want to look after local communities and allow local residents to build locally. Well, this could potentially take a lot of that ability and discretion away from us, you know, within Powys and Ceredigion. So this strategic development plan is the same. You know, you use the word that around our corporate plan, it doesn't really give you the vision you want and the detail you want. That's done deliberately, because I don't want Audit Wales coming in afterwards and telling us your document is telling you you're going to deliver X, Y, and Z, and you're going to do it by this particular date. That has to be at local discretion level in detailed plans lower down, rather than the highest level documents, because the documents we're talking about are the woolly vision that you're putting at the top end of a document. It's where they sequence in priority then as far as auditing, because your LDP will be far more important to Powys than the SDP. And the SDP in exactly the same way here. So we've got to be very careful how we craft and develop these documents going forward. So I don't want to put too much detail into these high-level documents and suddenly lose the ability to influence at a local level.
So therefore, the priority should be the LDP, which then influences the SDP.
Yeah,
So
well,
then it meets the needs of what we're looking at.
Yeah.
But you know, that for me, it means we're both respecting each other's wishes, taking things forward.
Correct.
But when will these subcommittees come forward? And the first thing for us, them subcommittees need to be setting out clear objectives.
Yeah.
So we're not just getting a paper, we're going down this route. We know what we're trying to achieve. So when we're scrutinizing it, they're coming back to us. So we should, when would they be meeting?
The subgroups are meeting now as officer level to talk about how we actually deal with this bit of work. So there's nothing yet on paper that's ready to go. And the only thing officers are doing at the moment is mapping out a journey that we can start. How do we start to produce these documents? The important thing for this group is the sequence in which scrutiny and decision-making happens. You've got to scrutinize these documents before decisions are made. So as the documents coming through the system, what we want is for local scrutiny, Powys, local scrutiny in Ceredigion, coming to regional scrutiny for yourselves, and then to the decision-making process, in order to make sure that by the time it comes to making decisions, the CJC themselves can speak with confidence, knowing that everybody's comfortable with the contents of the documents we're producing and the direction of travel and what we're hoping to achieve and what outcomes we want from them. So
you need the direction of travel before you can write the documents, because the documents have to appertain to the direction we're going. If we're just writing a document, then we could end up in 12 months' time with a load of officer time when we're all struggling for cash and we're going nowhere, we're peddling dead water. So there needs to be a rein on this, that it's not getting out of hand and we're not losing essential services and propping this up and it's a lame duck.
Absolutely.
So that's why I just think we need clear objectives for us to scrutinize anything.
Yeah,
anyway,
I'm not arguing with you there, Jeremy. You know, I think it's how we get what's the route map that we're going to create to achieve what you're suggesting. We're going to map it out very carefully and make sure that members, ultimately the decision makers, are cited on this as all the way through the journey. There's no point in us bringing a final draft version of a document and that's the first sight members have seen of it. These documents are far too important for us to get wrong. We've got to, and our starting point is going to be, you've already got an LDP, we've already got an LDP, you've already got a corporate strategy, we've already got a corporate strategy. So democratic input into those key documents are already in place. So that's our starting point on how do we start thinking and modelling for the future.
Okie doke. Cheers.
All along the journey on this. Otherwise, you're quite right. We'll end up with a 12 months down the line and it wasted everybody's time. Sorry, Emma wants to come in as well. Sorry, Elwyn.
Thank you. And thank you for covering that in so much detail then, Avion. Thank you. Emma, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I just want to endorse the points that Avion has made and actually and also that Councillor Jeremy has made. I think we're saying the same thing, but what Avion's trying to do is lead us in a way that keeps the doors open and that local democracy to take place, which is really, really important, and put those safeguards in place without the additional bureaucracy. So what we need to do is make sure that the level of detail that Councillor Jeremy is seeking, that we work that up then as officers and those lower subcommittee groups to a point then where we can bring that back, but we would also take it through our own respective organisations. And that's the point that Avion is making, that as a council we can take things through our own respective functions and governance as well as through here, but we're trying to limit the duplication and try and limit any adverse effects, I think, really, of the additional governance that's placed upon us from government in respect of utilising the CJC. As Avion said earlier, working as one authority to another and actually co-producing is very different compared to multiple authorities that are working as one and that may have moved other components into into the CJC itself.
Yeah.
So we're at the very, very early stages at the moment, but it's certainly going to grow over a period of time. So I just want to endorse everything that Ivan has said and give Councillor Jeremy assurances that actually we're saying the same thing.
Okay.
Can I just come back for one bit, Hiram? All I
Yes,
can say is in 12 months' time, if we haven't got clear objectives, I've got to be honest with you, I will be holding people to account, because sitting around 12 months on and being nowhere, and a lot of officers' time, which is going to be needed, I will want to see clear personally. I hope everyone else has agreed, but in 12 months, we will need to see clear objectives by then. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Anybody else for comment now today? No? Okay. Any other business? Oh, sorry, we need to note, don't we?
Just to note.
This report, yes, from the Chief Exec. We need to note the content of the report, and thank you very much once again, Avion. And so, yes, on to any other business. We seem to have brought this back in on time, more or less. It was scheduled for an hour. Has anybody got any other business that they wish to raise before we draw this meeting to a close?
Chair, can I just indicate to members that I have drawn the ICT problems which we've had this afternoon and on the previous occasion to our ICT staff in Powys, and they're going to liaise with their colleagues in Ceredigion to see if we can fix it. And I've also asked them to check as to the availability of translation facilities on Teams Live. You can have Teams Live was the issue before, but we couldn't have it, and they're going to check that. So I thought I'd just give members that update.
Well, thank you for that, because you know, we do rely so much on IT now, and having these meetings via Zoom or Teams. So it's vitally important that we do get it right going forward. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if there's no other business, we will draw this meeting to a close. And thank you very much to the speakers today, to Avion for giving us a detailed background of his report contained within the document pack today. Very much appreciated. And I thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.